Videos talking about eye level and perspective often involve diagrams such as this one. While these are very accurate, it sometimes can be more difficult to apply this framework to real life scenes. So in this video, we're going to look at a number of very different photographs and consider where eye level is and consider what implications that has for the perspective of that scene. This is a very typical sort of scene used to describe eye level. Part of its value is pointing out that eye level is just that, it's eye level. But it's not particularly the eye level of the people in the scene, it's the eye level of the person looking at the scene or the level of the camera that took the photo. Eye level can be a little bit misleading if we think it means the eye level of the people in the scene. But if the photographer is standing on the same level as the people in the scene, eye level will in fact line up with the eye level of the people there. It's important to find eye level because we know that the perspective lines angle down and meet on the eye level. And if we just take two lines, we can see that they meet on the eye level. Eye level is often called the horizon, but I find that misleading because it doesn't necessarily line up with the actual horizon on the picture. So how do we find eye level when we look at a scene? Particularly one where the people's heads don't all line up. What I like to do is I find two perspective lines that clearly angle in opposite directions. So here I have a perspective line on the top of the roofs, and we'll use the perspective line of the gutter, and we can see that they cross there, and that should give me a good indication as to where eye level is. Now that I look at the lines, the perspective lines where the angles aren't as extreme, I can see in fact this line does slightly angle up towards the eye level and this line above it angles down towards eye level. So this is the eye level. Now why is eye level so high in the street in this scene? It's because I was standing on the steps of the Madeleine Church, very high off the ground, and so my eye level is much higher than the eye level of all the people. And that's also why their heads don't line up, because I'm not on the same level as they are. I'm looking over the top of them. There are no people here to indicate where eye level might be, and of course we don't know whether the photographer was standing on something when they took this photo. We need to look to see where we have a true horizontal line amidst all the angled perspective lines, because clearly the lines go in this direction on the left side of the building and they angle the other way on the right side of the building. So where do we find a horizontal line? And this is quite straightforward because there are so many lines on the lower part of the building, and clearly eye level is going to be somewhere between this line and that line where the angled perspective lines meet in a straight line is about here. And then one little check I like to do is to think I can visualize a person standing here and that's about level where their head is. And so that makes sense in terms of the scale of what I'm seeing as well. And so having worked out eye level, it's quite clear with the other perspective lines. I like to position a few key perspective lines carefully, and then I know that all the lines in between have to fit their angle between those two angles, and that works on both sides of the vertical axis. And of course below eye level it's the same, but in this case there aren't as many lines. But what happens if we're not at street level when we're taking our photo? So here we have another Paris street scene, and the question is, where is eye level going to be? Have a look at some obvious perspective angles, and if they're quite clear they will help us plot where eye level will be. And so we see it's going to be somewhere about here, but then more important is to accurately line it up with the detail that we see in the subject matter. I can see that this line angles down and this line angles up, so it's somewhere in between. And what this shows is that in fact I was on the first floor. It's the floor above the ground floor. This is the spot where I'm level with in my building. So this is my eye level. This eye level is the eye level for everything that we see in this scene, not just this building, because it's the eye level for everything we're looking at. And if we want to look at this building behind, its perspective lines are not the same as this building's because it's on a different plane. It's not in the same straight line as this building. It's angled differently. So its perspective lines are different, but they will still meet on this eye level, but they will meet a long way off to the left-hand side. Sometimes our viewpoint is from higher up. Here we have a scene in Montmartre in Paris at the top of some stairs. And again, the question is, where is eye level? Where is there the horizontal line? Obviously, up here, the lines are angling down, the perspective lines, and down here, the perspective lines are angling up. So it's going to be somewhere fairly high in my picture frame this time. It's going to be about here. From this viewpoint, eye level in the picture is really quite high in my scene. But again, I see that the perspective rules apply, and in fact, the perspective angles do meet on the eye level. And the same is true for the buildings on the left-hand side. If I take one of my lowest perspective angles and I take one of my upper perspective angles, I can see that they meet on eye level. So by establishing the eye level before we start to draw our scene, it gives us a check as to where our perspective lines need to angle to. Ironically, it's most useful for the perspective lines that have the least angles. For the ones in this area, it can be harder to get the lines in the right position where they actually change direction from angling up to angling down. Here we are looking up the tower in the British Houses of Parliament. Where is eye level here? We can look at the angles on this front side of the building, and although the perspective angles are decreasing, when we get down to the lowest position, there is still a definite slope there. It's not a horizontal line. And on the right-hand side of the building, that's even more so the case. So what does this mean? Where do we put our eye level then? Well, in this situation, we can't place it because the eye level is actually lower than what we're drawing. So we mustn't force eye level and imagine that it has to be somewhere. Here's another view, looking from the dome of St. Paul's Cathedral in London, between and over the tops of the two towers. Where is eye level here? Where is the point where the perspective lines converge? This is tricky because although there are some here, these lines are all curved and this street's curved, and so there aren't any easy straight points to put things. We have some horizontal lines here, but they're clearly not eye level because there's two of them. There's no perspective lines that lead to them. This is actually the sort of scene to consider a vertical eye level, where we have a true vertical line. So if we look at all of these lines here, we can see that they angle quite significantly. However, they angle in different directions on each side of the center of our scene, and they angle greater and greater and greater the further away from the center. What that means is there is a place in the center of our scene where there is an actual vertical line, and that's the line directly in front of where the photographer was standing. Vertical perspective works the same way as horizontal perspective, that if you get some of the perspective lines and continue them, they will meet on the vertical eye level. In this case, it's clearly above the section that we're seeing. And also because I was up very high, it's going to be more level with the actual horizon. So sometimes we can't work out the horizontal eye level because it's so high that it's out of sight. Another situation to consider is when we have circular lines surrounding us. And we can see these circular lines that help define the circular shape of the dome, and then these circular sweeps that help define the circular space that's beneath the dome. But the thing I want to point out is that at the top of our scene, the lines are sloping in this direction, and the bottom of our scene, the curves are actually curving in the opposite direction. But that the further down you move, they curve less and less and less, and the further up you move, they curve less, until finally we have a straight line. We have our eye level. We can see that our eye level is going to be about here. This is the spot where the curves actually flatten out. the curves that come down from this direction from above, the curves that come up from this direction from below, this is where they meet in a straight line. And again, you can see that this is the level I'm standing on when I take this right here over on the left-hand side. And so that is my eye level. And so if we remember that in vertical perspective, curves become rounder the further they move away from eye level. We can see that operating here. As these rounded curved shapes move further away upwards from eye level, the curves become rounder and rounder and fuller. And the same way as the curves move down away from eye level, they become rounder and rounder, but in the opposite direction. Here's another interior scene with circular boundaries around it. This is Napoleon's tomb. What we can see is we have these circular shapes here, and we can see that as the circular shapes get higher and higher, they become less and less round. And when we're down the bottom, they're very round, much rounder down here than they are up here. So where is eye level? Think back to our principle that with circular lines, with perspective, they flatten, they become straighter as they move towards eye level. Eye level clearly has to be somewhere at the top. And we can see there are people here on the other side of a wall. Clearly, I'm standing on the opposite side of this circular space. So in fact, because I'm on the same level that they are on, my eye level is going to be approximately their eye level. So the eye level is going to be around here. Then when we draw, we can appreciate that every curve that moves away from eye level has to get slightly rounder. Here we have an interesting interior scene in the Vienna Opera House. Now, all the principles of perspective apply just as readily for interior scenes as they do for exterior things. It's important to know where the eye level is so we know where our lines are all angling to. And again, it's quite clear that the perspective lines lower down are very steep and they become less as they get up. So the eye level is going to be somewhere higher up, and just sometimes by looking at a scene, we get a sense of, oh, okay, the photographer was standing in one of these balconies on the other side of the atrium space. I'm standing where this figure here is standing, but on the opposite wall. And so eye level is going to be about here. Here we have the true horizontal. And so if we look at some of the perspective lines, we can see that, yes, in fact, beneath this line, they angle down. Although they're not going to meet on our vanishing point anywhere near camera range, they're going to be quite a long way off to the right. But we can also see, though, that our upper perspective lines angle the opposite direction to the same point on our eye level. And so it's just as important with an interior scene, whether it's multi-story or whether it's a single room, to work out where eye level is. Hi, I'm Stephen Travers. I've found it really helpful to make one of the first things I do in my own drawing practice when I look at a reference photo is to establish where the eye level is. Because having done that, it helps me get a sense of where all the perspective angles are going to be, which way they're going to go, and how steep or limited they're going to be. And also where that nice true horizontal or sometimes vertical line is going to be in my drawing. So why not give it a go? You don't have to keep doing it if it doesn't serve any purpose for you. The most important thing in your drawing is, of course, to have fun. And I'll see you next time. Bye.